everyone. Happy Thursday to you all. Hang on 1 second there so you get a chance to come on in. Um, we've got a little bit of brightness outside today. We had some nasty thunder during the night, woke me up, big roll of thunder, but it seems to be brightening up a lot today, which is really good. Nice to see all your faces there. Are you all ready for the reveal today? Some of you may already know what it is because you've been working through it, but if you've been following along and curious about our mystery shawl knit along, we've got the reveal today. It's very exciting because it's always nice to actually get to share what we've been working on. It's rainy and dreary in Western New York. A good day to stay in and knit, yes. That is always a big benefit to dreary weather as you get to stay inside. Elsa Louise, the shawl looks beautiful. Oh, I'm glad you like it, Elsa Louise. It was a fun one to knit up. And actually, I have been particularly excited watching all of the people knitting through it because every different yarn combination looks like a totally different shawl. It actually, and I've seen people have swapped some of the color combos around and if they've changed it up even again a little bit more. But it's turned out so nicely for, I think, every single knitter. There's been a few newer knitters on the Mystery Knit Along, and between the combination of kind of the slow progression of the shawl and the videos, they've actually learned quite a lot through the process. And particularly if you haven't done slip stitch color work before, it's a good way of learning because you can do it fairly slowly and you're repeating the same section over, so you can very quickly start to actually get a nice feel for the whole process. But if you have joined the Mystery Knit Along, you'll know as well today we had our grand prize was revealed. I don't have it with me, but because it's just been shipped out, but we've got some photos of it up and it went to Kirsten Huff. So congratulations. We've just popped a notice up in the actual a knit hub to actually let you know that you won. So it came with, there was a neon skyline kit we've got where there's a life in the long grass skein of yarn and 4 Nua that matches in to knit the shawl with the shawl pattern. There's 2 of the little hexagonal plates that we've got that are just so pretty, and there's a couple of Hannah's beeswax candles as well going into it, so that's all heading out to you today, which is very exciting. But for anyone who has either joined the knit along before or who is curious what it looks like, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the shawl now. So there's 2 different yarn combinations that we had put up. The one we have up here, it's super soft, and this is one that actually came as a surprise to us when we picked it up because I hadn't knit with Corriedale before. So this is life excuse me, my throat's a little off today, so if I slow down it's because my throat's giving out to me. So it's Corriedale in 2 colors, this one and this, and then we've paired it with some cumulus down here. So it begins as a triangular. I'll pull back so you can actually see the full thing here. Ooh. So it's triangular shawl and it begins at the very tip here, and instead of, you may have come across a garter tab cast on before, this is a little different, similar to the garter tab, but we're doing a little I-cord tab, and that allows the I-cord that goes down each side to be seamless up on the top, and then you've just got your 2 increases here and your 2 increases here. So it starts off nice and slow and easy, and you get yourself into the rhythm of the whole thing. And then you're introducing garter stripes. And one thing that I had a couple of people asking because they're not used to seeing this, normally when you do garter stripes, you keep that central stitch column as knit. I actually opt to purl it. And can you see how it creates this really fun little kind of an indent pattern where it drops down, and the garter stitch in the middle kind of enhances that. It doesn't create it, obviously, that's by virtue of the increases, but it definitely enhances that effect. And I loved the way that looked, that when you hold this back you get this little dip in the middle every time you got a color. So you working your way through here, you're introducing some of the other colors so that they're all starting to come in slowly into the process. And then as you work down here, you then start overlaying with your other color with this what's called the dragon wings stitch pattern. So it's a slip stitch pattern where these are slipped and you've just got little bitty cables, 1 by 1 cables that create that effect. So it takes it from having these, you know, vertical slip stitches, which are really not that interesting by themselves, and it creates something totally different by actually just having those cables pulling them out and creating the dragon wing shawl effect. Just super pretty all the way along here and along the other side. So that is the first 2 colors. Then we start moving down here and we're swinging into the next set of colors where you've now got your cumulus, which is your C3 layered over it, working your way down here, and eventually the edging of it is a variant where now instead of having stockinette stitch behind, you can see we've got a little bit of garter stitch running along behind these and the slip stitch pattern. Final edging, this one is a crochet loop edging. We've actually got a new tutorial up on our website as well for this. It's very straightforward. You're just doing little crochet chains and then casting binding off stitches underneath it. But I think it created, I really liked the edge effect to create it with this. It kind of finished the whole thing out. But in case that's not your thing, we've also got an I-cord edging, which this one here, this is Darney and Cumulus. And I put in a different I-cord edging into this. So that's kind of an overview of it. And as you can see, it's a pretty generously sized shawl, so it actually is quite comfortable to wear. It is, you can swing it around like this, where I've just got it looped around like across here, or you can put it over your shoulders. But the option I'm showing you up here is this one here. This is option 1, where you've got these 2 colors in your Cordale and this one in the Cumulus. And I don't have it separate, but these 2, I think it's option 11, where there's the 2 Darney and the Thistle Cumulus. So you can, of course, again, play with each of the colors as you're working through. So perhaps if you've got, I've seen people who did it from their stash, and you perhaps don't have enough of one of the colors, you can actually even start introducing a 3rd color, or this could also work with the gradient and having one over it. So there's a lot of ways that you can play with all of the colors by pulling them in together like this. So originally with the knit along, you got the video workshop with part of it. Now what's happened is the video workshop is a separate thing, and the pattern is a separate one by itself. And obviously the yarn kit is a 3rd thing. So you can kind of opt as to what is going to work for you, what things you want to jump into, or what you don't need. Because if you know how to work the stitch patterns and you're able to just go straight from the pattern, just the pattern by itself is going to do the job for you. But if you're new to any of the techniques, or you want kind of the reassurance of seeing them put together, then the video workshop could be a big help for you, I think. So this is our first reveal today. Second reveal is our Celtic Knits Club. So anyone who's part of the Celtic Knits Club 23, first installment got shipped out to you a couple of weeks ago. And yesterday morning, we launched the first 2 patterns. So I get to show them all with you here as well. Elsa Louise, you saw the color combination you've on, done with the light blue at the top. Yeah, exactly. I've seen that as well, where I've got it where the top part is the navy and then the bottom part is the blue, but it works great flipping it around as well. And actually, when you're kind of thinking about color combinations, I often think about how you're going to wear it and what you want up next to your face. So if you prefer lighter colors and that's what you want up here, you might perhaps start with that. So think about how it's going to be worn and which colors you prefer to have worn up next to your face, whether it's light or dark, or if you don't mind, then just take your pick. My preference was to go from dark to light, but it absolutely can be worked the other way around as well. There's no right or wrong, there's just different preferences. Else Louise, your yarn is stuck in customs. Oh, I'm sorry. I know Canada sometimes can be a bit tricky. I've had, like particularly a couple of years ago, I had orders going into Canada that could be stuck for like 5-6 weeks. It was like madness, but it generally is a little bit better these days, but not instant. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that it arrives for you quickly, because I know it's hard to watch people getting their packages and starting the yarn and not have it in your hands yet. But soon, you shall have it soon. But in the meantime, if you don't want to hear this, Elsa Louise, close your ears now so that you don't hear about what's actually in there. Although you may have popped in already, I suspect it may not be a surprise. So for this, we have Innisbeg hat and Innisbeg mitts. So there was two colours depending on which one of the clubs you were in. One colour, one of the clubs had the turf option and the other had the loam option. So I've got the two main samples I've got are in the loam. Here, I'm going to go ahead and put this on my head so you can see it more easily. So this is the loam in the hat, and it is super cozy. I'm a big fan of folded brims because it just keeps things so warm. If you want it, if you're in the wind, you can pull the sides down, things like that. So it works really well. The actual stitch pattern, as you can see, it's almost like a woven basket. It's these big 4x4 cables. It's not every row, it's periodically up through it. But the actual the cables are so big and fat that they create almost like a wickerwork effect through the whole hat, but it makes it very warm. The yarn itself, because it's a mix between merino and a little bit of mohair, it's not too heavy, it's not dense, it's woolen spun, so it's got a bit of lightness to it. So it can actually take these heavy cables without feeling super dense. But it's also why I started with a lot of ribbing, because if you had this all the way down, it's going to be too much. Elsa Louise, what size is my sample? This is the medium size. I generally will make the medium size in most hats because I've got a fairly average size head. You can see I didn't want to make this part too deep, so I counteracted with a wider ribbing that I folded back. This one is 4 inches wide. If you wanted a little bit longer to fold it back a bit further here, you might perhaps extend it to 5 inches. You should have enough yarn with that. For the two patterns will take less than 2 skeins, because these ones are not going to take a full skein of yarn. So you'll have enough. If you want to extend this a little bit, you can do that. The cable, let me put my head down. You can see all of the decreases, and I should probably take it off, it'd be easier to see. All of the decreases are all built into the actual cables at the top as well, which I always like. This is not exactly the right length because this was my first sample, so I was trying it out. It's the same size as this, but I had extended the actual head or the crown a little bit further. So this is the length on the top for the larger size. But I didn't add extra ribbing to fold because I was just trying it out. But you can see what it looks like in the turf, which it really, I think, just emphasizes how doesn't it just look like some kind of a quilted or a wickery basket across here. I just love the texture of this. And then the top of it, this is the cables all being worked in. This has not been fully blocked, but you get the idea of it. And so if you leave it straight down like this is what it would look like. This one was a bit long for me, so because it was landing somewhere in between, for the best option I found was to extend this, and then it's much easier to control the length of hat you want, because you can decide how far back you fold it or not fold it, so you end up with a much more customized hat length. The mitts, anyone who has seen me a couple of months ago will know that I basically did a prototype for these mitts, but with the rusty colour when I got really cold. But I didn't have any cable in the front, but I did have this ribbing in the back, and I had ribbing across the front. And I loved them so much that I decided to take that prototype and build it into what would go with the hat. So I took it here where you've got an increase here. We took a little bit of the cable up along here and built it into the actual mitts. And then you've got, I put these on as well. The top part here, it folds down, or you can obviously unfold it if you want it a little bit cozier. This can be extended, or you can even shorten it. If you're like, I'm never going to wear it like this, you could even work it shorter. But it feels kind of nice and snug to have this folded back. It might look a little strange as you're knitting it, because when you're knitting that really long section, it looks a bit peculiar, but then once it folds down, it works really well. Same with the cuff here. It's not terribly extended. It's plenty long to give you a nice fit, but you can either extend it or shorten it depending on your choice. These ones, again, medium size. I've got average to larger size hands. So if you've got basically average are larger size, then these are going to work. The larger size, I think, would kind of generally be if you have much larger hands or if you're doing a men's version. I think this would also work very well for a men's pattern. Smaller ones or teenager ones would be the smallest. Can you get the pattern on your webpage? These ones originally, these are part of the Celtic Knits Club. The full club came out a few months ago and is closed. However, you can still get access to the digital club. It encompasses all of the digital aspect of the club. So it'll be, these are the first 2 patterns. There's going to be 3 more patterns, including a cardigan at the end. And you'll have all of the video workshops as they come out, as well as access to the exclusive forums, and of course all of the Zoom launches. So that we'll pop up a link afterwards so that you can actually so that you're able to get hold of the digital content, but they're not available individually yet. The next, when the club is over next autumn, there will be individual. Elsa Louise, great Lizzie walking mitts. Yes, absolutely. They are perfect for walking dogs, or in my case, what I've been wearing mitts for a lot is if I'm typing a lot, my hands get really, really cold, but obviously you can't cover your fingers, so they work very well for that as well. Or if you want to access your phone and things like that. So if you do join the digital club, and you obviously, the yarn itself is exclusive to the club for the moment, it's a mix between merino and 14% mohair. We do have, and it's Aran weight, we do have a yarn in the shop that I think is going to be a pretty good match. It's milled by the same company. It's the Soft Donegal. So this would be, it's 100% merino. And it's going to be, it won't be identical, but it'll be the same weight and it's going to have the same tweety effect. So this is a good option if you want to actually go and knit. If you want to go knit one, if you're joining the club after the fact. 2 skeins will knit both the hat and the mitts, and you will have enough to extend the hat if you so desire, because the mitts don't use a full skein, they're a little bit less. Elsa Louise, when will the DAS yarn become one of your yarns? Will they? Yes, we're hoping it will come next autumn. We'll probably start introducing JAS at that point, once we can get enough stock from our mill and when the club is closed. So the final club installment is going to be in July, and it'll probably September, October, something like that. They will have a bit more JAS available in the shop as well. But yes, I'm enjoying the feel of this. I think that the mohair definitely adds warmth but a little bit of lightness to the whole thing, so it's kind of got a slightly different feel. If you're part of the club and you've been knitting with JAS, I'd love to know what you think of it, if you like knitting with it. I'm personally enjoying it and liking the end effect. One thing that we actually discovered is we swatched a lot, obviously, with it when we got it. So when we get a new yarn, what I'll do is I'll try it in all sorts of different things. I'll try it in stockinette stitch with a whole load of different needle sizes. Then, because we wanted to do cables, I started swatching different cables. We discovered that it loves chunky cables. It loves big fat cables that really stand out and look visually very, very dramatic. Whereas very small, delicate cables just didn't work so well. They kind of got lost, or they lost their definition, and they just were not as interesting as the bigger cables. So we kind of veered towards slightly wider cables or more dramatic cables with it. Seemed to give the best effect with this yarn. And I mean, that's the fun thing about when you get a new yarn, is you don't know what it's going to be like, and you can't pre-decide what you're going to do until you get it on your needles. You probably discovered the same thing when you're trying to substitute a yarn, for instance. You might think, oh, this is a perfect match for this pattern. You get it out, you start swatching, and it just doesn't want to behave. Sometimes it just won't behave. And in those cases, you probably need to use that yarn for a different project. That every yarn and pattern is not going to work together, even though it looks sometimes like it should. You do need to swatch, and that will tell you all about whether it's going to work or not when it's actually on your needles. I think that's probably it from me today. Just a reminder, we will pop this up later, but if you are planning on joining me next week for my live, we will be one day early. So I'll be the same time, but on Wednesday next week instead of Thursday. We're going to be traveling, myself and Laura, next Thursday and Friday. We're going to a trade show in Germany, which will be very exciting. We're looking for lots of new exciting yarns, so keep an eye out for interesting stories we have going, letting you know what we see, if there's anything new and exciting and interesting. But it will mean that we're going to do the live on Wednesday. If you have anything you'd like answered or any questions you have for us, pop them up there and we'll get them answered for you next week. Thank you for joining me. Bye.